Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Big Lair here, Jack's Private Coffee Corner. I'm sitting here in an office, about ready to work with a client in about 20 minutes. I'm here early, and on the way here, as I was getting out of the train station, I remembered that this city is a place that I used to hang around in a lot, and I had two very memorable episodes in this city. One was probably an alternate reality. I entered an alternate reality, and then the second part of that was meeting two Japanese men in black. Let me back up and give you some background on my story here. So we were living in this city, my family and I, my wife and I, and younger son. I only had one kid then. And we were doing something in the town, town next to here. And it was kind of off the beaten track, this place we were going. So I'm the kind of guy that I like to take roads I've never been on before, So I noticed there was a road that kind of followed the train line. It paralleled the train line that I used a lot. So I said to my wife, hey, we've never been down this road. Let's try this out. Let's see how far this road goes. So we're driving down this road, and after about 10 minutes, we come upon this really big park. A big park with, new equipment. It looked really nice. It really stood out in Japan because most parks are small. They're so tiny that you couldn't even play like catch ball or anything. And if you had a soccer ball and kicked it, it would immediately, be out in the street or something. So really the parks here are so tiny, you can't imagine how tiny they are. So this was a huge park, lots of room to run around in, and very nice equipment. It reminded me of being in America. So even though my son was only around 15 months old, we decided to go there, and we had our video camera and we had our normal camera. So this, I'm talking about, over 16 years ago. So we spend this awesome day, the three of us at the park. My wife takes all these amazing photos. We've got videotape of the three of us at the park playing around. We had parked our car, on this road that was parallel to the train line. We videotaped the train going by numerous times. We took a break, went back in the car and sat down and had some snacks and something to drink. And my wife and I were videotaping each other while we were doing that, talking with our son. And we were going to, make the footage into a home movie. So that was great. Went home, perfect day. Now fast forward to about 3 to 4 weeks later, where we have a plan to meet with my good friend and his wife. We're going to go out to dinner. So we had kind of goofed around and gone shopping earlier. And so then we leave this shopping mall to go to my friend's place. We get there like 30 minutes faster than we thought. There was no traffic and everything was so smooth. So I said to my wife, hey, since we have all this time, let's go back to that park, And my friend lived right on this train line. So I said, I think it's just, 5 minutes up the road here. Because we had been there before and taken video and taken photos. So we decided to go to this park, and we can't find it. So we're driving all over the place, driving around in circles. And I said, well, that's really weird. I know it was between this train station and this other train station, and that's where we are. Well, maybe I remembered it incorrectly. Let's go to the next train station. We'll look between, these two train stations a little farther away. Nope, that parallel road ended. There was no way we could get next to the train tracks. So we're driving around. And I have a pretty good memory for roads and where I've been. So I come to so finally I find this road along the train tracks, and then I'm, piecing together where we were. And I know that next to this park there was like a huge condo, this huge, like I would call it an apartment building, but in Japan they call it, like condominiums, 25-story building with individual condominiums in there, like apartments, right? Apartments that people buy instead of buying a house. So I remembered the name of that place and where it was in relation to the park and in relation to the train tracks. So I finally find the road, find that building, and I say, well, this is the building because I remember the name because they had used English in the name of the building. Here's the train tracks, the park should be here. But now, where the park should be is a huge factory. And obviously there was not a factory there because, we spent time there. We had video evidence of it, photographic evidence. So as we're sitting there, I suddenly get this feeling that, oh man, we got to get home. Something's not right. Let me just adjust my phone here. I'm holding it. So, I immediately feel like, boy, we got to get out of here. Something's not right. I felt really, really funny. I said to my wife, we got to get home. So I drive like a bat out of hell back to our apartment. And standing in front of our apartment, there's a guy in a black suit knocking on our door. Well, I shouldn't say knocking on our door. He's trying to look in the window of our living room. And he's standing, in front of our door. We got a little tiny, like stucco wall that goes around a little yard, and he's leaning over this wall trying to look in the window. Meanwhile, there's a second guy in a black suit on a tiny bicycle, one of those, collapsible bicycles that are kind of popular now. But this is 16 years ago. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Someone's trying to get into our place. So I tell my wife, you guys stay in the car. I'm going to kick these guys' asses. So I pull up. They both see me. The guy in the bicycle, he doesn't tear off, but he gets out of the way so that I can park in our parking spot. So they knew a little bit about us if they knew where our parking spot was, right? And then the other guy, he quickly goes away from the door and starts to move towards the far end of the building, near where we had just come in the parking lot. So I jump out of the car, I give my wife the house key and say, you guys get in the house, I'm going to take care of these guys. And my wife was a little nervous because until this point, I don't think she had ever heard me swear before, and I was swearing, to speed up the process of her and my son getting in the house, because I knew something was really wrong, right? So the guy in the bicycle, he's looking at me like this smirk. And I had already processed in my mind that, oh, these are two men in black, but these are Asian men in black, And I had heard about men in black before. And I was, I don't want to say I was prepared to meet someone like this, but I wasn't nervous about it. I wasn't fearful. I was really angry. And I remember this guy smirking at me and me thinking I'm going to rip your head off. So my wife gets in the house, and I just start walking towards the guy with a purpose, with a, let's just say, focused intent on taking care of this guy. Well, he just tears off on this bike, and the other guy is at the very end of the building where we came in the parking lot, and he zips around the corner, and this other guy now is hauling ass on his bike. So I run around the building. Now, it took me maybe 3 seconds to get from where I was to the end of the building and to look around the corner to see where these guys went. 3 seconds tops. Now, across from where we lived, there was a 7-story apartment building, and you could only see part of it, one end of it. about a quarter of it, about a quarter of the end, and you had to turn around the corner of this place where we live to see the remaining 3/4 of it. So 3 seconds, man, I'm sprinting. I get to the end, I look. The guy on the bicycle is nowhere to be seen. The guy who was at our door, I'm looking for these guys, right? I notice he's on the 6th floor of this apartment building looking down. You know, there's like a walkway on each floor, you know, like a hallway, I guess. He's now on the 6th floor, and distance-wise, I would say he would have had to run 80 meters just to the stairs, and then he would have to go up 6 flights of stairs. So in a matter of 3 seconds, this guy made that distance and was up on the 6th floor. Come on, he makes Usain Bolt look like an old lady running, right? And the other guy is no longer on a bicycle. He's behind the wheel of a van, of a black van. So I'm like, oh man, this is some Men in Black shit. Wow. I run in the house to grab my camera. Again, I sprint into the door. The camera's right on my, you know, when you walk in the door, you've got like a little table there in your entryway. I always had the camera there because we took it wherever we went and took photos. I tear it out of the case, turn it on, and as I'm running, I take 2 photos of me running to make sure that, yep, it works, yep, it works. I get to the corner, so maybe I'm in the house a total of, we'll say I was slow, 10 seconds maybe, right? I ran in pretty fast. I think it was less than 10, but I'll say 10. I get back out to the side of our building. Now both guys are in the van, and the van is coming towards me on the road. I put the camera up, the camera will not work. I hold the camera down to the, you know, I face it towards the concrete, you know, the ground. Boom, I take a photo. I put it back up to where their van is, it won't work, the button's jammed. I put it down to the ground, boom, I take another photo of the ground. And now, by the time I put the camera up, their van is passing me and they're both looking at me, and I'm holding the camera up trying to take the photo, and I'm letting loose with a stream of expletives at these guys, letting them know how much I appreciated their visiting my house. And they turn the corner and tear off. So I don't know what that was all about. That was the strangest thing. You know, it sounds similar in some ways to the Men in Black stories I've heard of people in America or Europe, but I've never heard of anyone encountering, you know, Asian Men in Black. I don't want to say they're Japanese Men in Black because they looked Asian. They look Asian. The one guy, you know, when he looked at me, when I was getting out of the car thinking, I'm going to kick your ass, he had one of these very primal looks in his eyes. You know, if you've ever seen anyone who's, you know, if you've been in martial arts or done any fighting or been in tournaments, you know there's a look in someone's eyes when they're, you know, just ready to go for it. You know what I mean? They're ready to rumble, so to speak. He had that look. And, you know, in my mind, it didn't matter what he looked like. I was just so angry. I'm not trying to say like, hey, I'm a tough guy or this or that. I'm just trying to tell the story as it happened. And maybe someone else out there has a similar story. I'd like to hear it. And I'm not sure why these guys visited. Now, I wondered, was it because I found this, you know, slipped into this alternate reality and then realized, hey, there's something weird going on here. Or a number of weeks prior to this, I had found an underground nuclear base. Well, I say underground nuclear. It was an underground base powered by nuclear energy. And it was just kind of weird. My guides led me to it and said, oh, here's the cooling pond for it. Like, what? Boy, this is out of place. This is in the middle of a very busy city. And they had 2 cooling ponds. One was full of water and one was empty. And they had these huge pipes coming out. So like anybody would do, I picked up these huge rocks to see if I could hit these cooling tubes. Let me tell you, when you hit those, when you hit those cooling tubes with a big rock, man, does that make an echo. So it might have been that. It might have been me, messing around, noticing these cooling tubes of this underground base. And the interesting thing about the underground base is I went to check it out like 3 or 4 days later with my son. I was on a bicycle and had him on one of those kid seats, Now there was a fence around the thing, a really tall fence with a warning saying stay clear, danger, and all this stuff, which wasn't there previously 3-4 days ago. So somebody came there and put that fence up and the warning signs up pretty quick. And the cooling pond that was empty that I was throwing the rocks in, now that was full of water. So was it that? I don't know. But coming here today and walking through the station made me remember that story. And now that I think about it, I have another story from this station of getting on a train and meeting what I can only describe as, this guy on the train who wasn't really a guy, I think he was just part of the software of the Matrix. And let's see, it's almost time for me to meet with these people, so I'd better stop this video or they'll think I'm nuts hearing me talk about this stuff. But I will continue the video later and tell you about the guy on the train who was not a human in my opinion. He was just a piece of software, a piece of code, and I messed with the code a little bit. And that's another fun story. So, okay, when I'm done and on my way home, I'll tell the second part of this tale. Okay, take care. Okay, everybody, I'm back here with my story. My apologies, I wanted to finish last night. That wasn't possible. I was hoping to be on the train, get an empty train car, and then I could tell the story, but I just couldn't do it. Got home late, and then my kids were telling me about school and whatnot, and bada bing, bada boom, I'm in bed before I know it. Okay, so I just told you the story about this whole park that disappeared, which now I think was simply my family and I accessing an alternate reality. And then the men in black who showed up at my at my apartment there. I'm not sure if they are related to this park disappearing / alternate reality possibility or not. However, I had a really strong feeling that I needed to get back to my apartment, and when I did get back, as I just said, the two men in black were there. Okay. Now, in this same city, this same train station that I went through yesterday a couple times, years ago I lived near there actually. And years ago I was a teacher and I taught a lot of business English classes. So I would have like executives and upper level people as my students here in Japan, and then they would be sent overseas to, be the CEO or the vice president or whatever of some company, some subsidiary overseas. So I dealt with a lot of people like that. So my schedule was a little different than the average, 9 to 5 person, because I was working around all of these executive schedules. So this story takes place because I was asked to teach the son of a company president, and he hardly spoke English at all. And I had to get him ready because he was being sent to Harvard University for a summer course, and it was a speech class. And for some reason his father thought, yeah, my kid needs to go to Harvard to this summer school class, and that'll benefit him or whatever. So I was in this position where I had to go and meet this kid once a week. I say kid, but he was probably in his mid-20s, and I was in my mid-30s at the time. So I get on the train, and I met this kid for like 15 weeks in a row. Pretty intensive, 3 hours every time. So I go to the train station where I was last night, and I'm waiting for the train to come. And I don't know if you're familiar with taking trains or not, but here in Japan, pretty much wherever you want to go, there will be an express train, one or more varieties of express trains, and then there will be what they call the local train, which stops at every stop. So the express trains will stop at the major stops. It's much faster, thus the name express, and the local trains will stop at every stop. So I needed to take the local train because I was stopping in one of these smaller, lesser known stations, which was located near this company. So the train comes, I enter the train car, and this is the local train, right? So the train comes and it waits for 10 minutes, and then the express train comes and people get off the express train. Some of them get onto this local train, and then the train, they both take off. So I sit down in a particular train car. There's no one in the car. And I'm facing the north. So sitting on this train at this platform, I could either face south or north. And because it was, summertime, it's kind of bright if you look out the window to the south. So I sat facing the north. And just before, so the express train comes, some people get off of that train and get on the train I'm on. And this one particular fellow gets on and sits directly across from me. I don't think anything about it, but it's only, maybe 6 people in this whole train car. So as I always do, I'm looking at everybody, noticing things. Oh, that guy has a pin on his lapel. He must work for some, whatever company. I noticed his shoes, noticed the bag he was carrying. Didn't think anything of it. Well, the next week rolls around, I take the exact same train because it's, the timing is good. So I know I have to take the train, whatever it was, like the 2:17 train to wherever. So I get there, get in the same car, sit in the same exact seat I was the previous week because I'm the first guy on this train car. The express train comes, and the guy I had seen the previous week gets on the train, sits exactly in front of me. Again, not many people on the train. And I'm looking at him thinking, I think I saw this guy last week. Yeah, he's got that pin on his lapel there. Yep, I remember those shoes that he had. Geez, I think he might have had the same colored suit and the same tie. Yeah, the bag is the same. That makes sense. But, I'd be surprised if he had the same suit and tie on. Maybe that's, his wife has, put his clothes into the wash cycle or whatever, the dry cleaning, and it just happened to be that he's got the same suit and tie. So I thought, okay, I'll keep that in mind in case I see this guy again. Just to, here I am bored on a train with nothing else to do. So I decided, I'm looking at my, I've got one of those monthly schedule books. So I'm looking at that, seeing, what I'm going to be doing for that week. And I decide to write down some information about this guy, just to see, curiosity's sake, if he's going to have the same suit and tie on. So I make a note about his lapel pin, which side it's on. It was on his left side. What it looks like. The color of his suit. I noted the color of his tie. I noted his bag, what the maker of the bag was and the condition, and his shoes. And his shoes were worn in a particular fashion, which led me to believe that he really supinated. He supinated when he walked, supinating and pronating. So he gets off the train, at whatever stop, and then I get off a few stops later. Don't think much about it. Next week comes. So this is like the 3rd week that I'm doing this. Same thing, I get to the station at the same time, get on that empty train car, the express train comes, people get off, lo and behold, this guy gets on, sits exactly in front of me once again for the 3rd time. I look at his tie, oh my God, he's got the same tie on. Now I pull out my schedule book, my monthly schedule book, look at my notes from last week. Yep, same tie, same suit color, same pin, bag is the same, shoes are the same. And then this time I thought, well, I'm going to write down what socks he has. This is kind of weird. Maybe he's one of those guys that, like this was a Thursday, so every Thursday he wears the same suit and the same tie just to make things easier. So then I make a note of his socks because he has this particular brand of socks and I can see the brand name on one of them. And I'm trying to figure out what else I can note about this guy, And I realized even though there's only a few people on this train, he never looks at me, And sitting on the train car, if you've ever taken a train, there's not much to do if you don't have in those days, there were no smartphones. There were cell phones, but there were no smartphones. So people were not listening to music on their cell phone. Maybe they were texting, but not like it is now. Most people just sat on the train. Maybe they read a book. If they didn't, they just looked around. You'd look around and make eye contact with everybody on the train, especially when there's only a handful of people. So I was thinking, that's interesting. The fourth week comes, same exact thing as the first 3 weeks. He sits on the train in front of me, on the seat in front of me. Across from me, there's like a row between us. So, it's like the train car is kind of long, and on each long side there are benches to sit on, and then the middle is open. So I'm sitting on this side, and then he's sitting on that side. Everything is the same. I'm thinking, this is really weird. 4 weeks in a row, this guy is wearing the same stuff. And then I thought, he's got his right leg is up sitting on his left leg, like if you pulled your foot up, to rest your leg on your other leg. You're resting his right leg on his left leg. So I made a sketch of him in the pose he was in. So now I'm really trying to write down all these details. Still doesn't look at me. So I'm thinking about this all week. And I had spoke with someone that I knew on the phone. So I'm in Japan, but I had a friend in America I was speaking to who's, like somebody with psychic abilities. So I'm telling her the story, and she says, "Boy, I get the feeling that he's not real." And I said, "What do you mean he's not real? A guy sat across from me. I know he's real." And she said, No. She said, I'm looking at the situation of you being on the train, and I can notice other people. She said, but even when I remotely look at someone, I can tell they're a human. They have a soul and whatnot, and I can see their aura. But this person you're talking about, I have a picture, but it's like gray. He looks gray, so I don't think he's a human." And she said, I've been places where I've encountered these people, and I call these people a filler human. A filler human. They fill in part of the landscape to give the impression that everything is normal, was her description. So I said, wow, that kind of stuff exists? Geez, that sounds almost like, it's like we're living in this software program, and he's just, part of the software program to make things look normal, right? And she said, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So she said, well, you can easily find out if he is or not. I said, well, how would I do that? She says, well, you always get on the train before he does. Sit in his seat. Sit in his seat. And if he gets on and acts as though he doesn't know what to do and looks flustered, most likely he's one of these filler humans, because he's been programmed to get on the train, sit in a certain seat, look a certain way, and then get off at another train stop. So if he seems flustered at all, or tries to sit on top of you, that'll be a really good indication he's one of these filler humans. But if he gets on the train and notices you're sitting where he normally sits, and a normal human being would just sit in a different spot. Okay, that's pretty easy. So the next week, now this is the 5th week, I believe. I get on the train, and instead of sitting facing north, I sit where this guy has been sitting, facing south. So I see the express train come, because now I'm looking out the window where I can see the express train, and I see the guy get off the train. He enters the train car, and it's as though he doesn't even see me, and he turns around to sit down, and I'm just about to say, "Whoa, hey buddy, you're going to sit on me?" Just before I say that, he turns around to sit and kind of turns looking back, and then kind of jumps up, noticing that he can't sit there. And he's like looking at kind of my chest area, and his head's going like this, like, he doesn't know what to do. He's just searching around. He's not making eye contact with me yet. He's searching around like, oh, what to do. And he backs up a little bit, looks at the door, the entrance where he had just come on the train, turns around as though he's going to try and sit down again, gets close to me, and starts doing this, like looking around. And it reminded me of like, in one of the Star Wars movies, I don't know why, it reminded me of like C-3PO if he had like shorted out or something, and like a droid didn't know what to do, the program's not telling it what to do it. So it's like having a breakdown. So this guy literally, his eyes were darting back and forth, and his head was doing these kind of jerky movements, looking around. He never made eye contact with me. And by then, the doors of the train closed. We're getting ready to take off. And he stood next to me, and there was like a pole there that, when the train gets busy and there's not enough room for people to sit, then people stand up and hold these. You could hold this pole or one of these overhead things. He held the pole facing me, and he was pretty close. I'm going to say he was 90 centimeters, about 3 feet away, holding his bag, and the whole time his head was doing like this. The whole time until he got off at so many stops down the way. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, this lady that I know, she told me, about these filler humans. This guy is exhibiting the behavior, she said he would if he was a filler human. And that kind of blew my mind to think, wait a second, there could actually be people that are not human who are just, filling in the scenery of all of this reality. And if there's people, what else is there? Are there also animals? Are there things like trees and houses and, mountains, whatever, that are just filler? They're not actually real as we would like to think they are. So, and I should also mention, I noted which station this guy got off on. He got off at the same station every time. So this particular day, when he's like holding this pole, facing me, kind of with his head going back and forth the whole time, it was like 15 minutes straight where he just did like this. And I was thinking, God, this guy's, if he's real, he's having a mental breakdown. So he gets off at a stop. The following week comes. Guess what? No guy on the train. He was not there. Same train, I got there the same time. I'm waiting in the same. This time I sit on my, the side that I had originally sat on. I see the express train come. I turn around, look out the window. I don't see the guy. He doesn't get on the train. And so I took that train for another 9 times after that. I never saw the guy again. And a couple weeks later, I talked again to this friend of mine, and I said to her, "You are not going to believe what happened." So I told her the story, and she said, "Oh yeah, he's a filler human." Yeah, that's exactly, you described the classic behavior of a filler human when they're unable to carry out the directive of their program. So his program was to get on that train, sit in that spot, look a certain way, and then get off the train, and you messed with it. And she said, well then, if he didn't show up the next week, and the next week, you have to ask yourself, is there someone who is programming these things? And did they realize you messed up the program, so they had to delete that part of the software? And then because you did that and realized it, are they now watching you? Now, there have been movies since then. So this was a long time ago. I'm talking 12 to 15 years ago that this occurred here in Japan. And since then, I've seen a couple movies. I can't remember the names offhand of these movies, but they've alluded to this kind of thing. There was a movie with, was it Matt Damon, possibly? I may be incorrect there, but there was some movie that all of this, this guy realizes that everything is kind of fake, and there's a group of individuals that make sure everything looks just perfect, and they never want you to see behind the scenes of what's going on. But in this movie, this guy is able to see that. So when I saw that movie, I was really reminded of, oh yeah, that time on the train. Now, I've never had a similar thing happen. Possibly, I'm thinking there are people, these filler humans around us. I just haven't spent the time to notice it. I don't have a schedule. So for the last, we'll say 10 years, I have not had a schedule where I do the same thing every week. The same thing, the same time, taking the same train, so to speak. For example, I don't have anything like that. Now, recently, I have been taking trains, and I do take the same train, and I have noticed there are a couple people that I see every single time, and I've kept an eye on them, but they're wearing different clothes. They look, they're carrying different bags. So that makes me tend to think that they're just, normal humans living a normal life, as we all would. We wouldn't wear the same clothes all the time, right? So that's something for you to think about, a pretty good woo-woo subject there. So let me know what you think. So you got 3 things to chew on there: the park that disappeared, the Japanese men in black, and then the filler human I met here in Japan. Okay, everybody, you have a great day.